She was beaten every day, and one day your wolf did it. You won't believe it, but in the end, the snow thickly covered the ground, muffling all sounds. Behind the whistle of the wind, night fell, dark and icy. But inside the cabin, in this isolated private hell, lay Sophia. The 18-year-old girl lay on the dirty wooden floor, her body covered in red marks and bruises, while her disheveled hair hid her tear-streaked face. A faint smell of blood lingered in the air, mingling with the mold on the walls. Her adoptive father, Jonah, held a braided whip in his hands. His eyes gleamed under the dim light of the lamp. He was drunk on alcohol and the pleasure of others' suffering. "But you'd never think it was a girl," he growled, preparing to strike again. Outside, among the snow-covered trees, two golden eyes glowed in the darkness. Aiden, the black wolf, stayed in the shadows, carefully sniffing the scent of fear emanating from the cabin. For years, Aiden had accompanied Sophia in her secret journey to adulthood, becoming more than just a friend. This animal was her only friend, her only family. That night, hearing the heart-wrenching scream, he knew something terrible was about to happen. Sophia felt the whip tear her skin and bit her lip to keep from screaming. But when Jonah picked up a broken bottle and moved toward her, a deafening howl echoed through the forest. The sharp wind rushed into the cabin through the door Jonah had forgotten to close. On the threshold stood Aiden, standing in the snow in his black fur, baring his sharp teeth in a menacing snarl. Jonah staggered back, clutching the broken bottle. The wolf's mouth opened, revealing sharp fangs, and his gaze showed no fear, only hatred and protection. Sophia still lay on the floor, barely believing what she was seeing. Her friend, the wolf who had always lurked in the shadows, had come for her. Jonah spat on the ground and laughed, a laugh full of depravity and drunkenness. "What do we have here?" he said, raising the broken bottle. "Your wolf came to save the girl?" He swung the bottle, ready to strike. But Aiden didn't wait. In an instant, the wolf lunged, turning into a ferocious black blur in the air. Before Jonah could react, Aiden pinned him to the floor with sharp claws and knocked him down. The bottle flew to the side, shattering against the wall. Jonah screamed, "Let go, you beast!" and grabbed the attacker's forearm, biting off a piece. The crack of bones was horrifying, and Jonah's voice echoed through the cabin. His other hand desperately searched the ground for something to defend himself, but Aiden lunged again, biting his shoulder. Sophia, despite her wounds, mustered the strength to lift her head. Her heart was pounding wildly, and she could have run from the danger. But then the memories flooded back. Nights of pain, screams no one heard, marks on her skin that never fully healed. If she ran, he would return. Jonah always came back, and she would never be free. She closed her eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, something inside her had changed. Aiden, the wolf, didn't let go of Jonah. His body still vibrated with rage. Sophia's voice trembled, his golden eyes glowing in the dark, as if asking a question. Sophia took a step forward, staring intently at the man who had tortured her for nearly 10 years. Jonah was now weak. His face was covered in sweat and blood. He tried desperately to back away from her. "Please, Sophia," he whispered, coughing. But she felt no pity. Without taking her eyes off him, Sophia grabbed the shotgun leaning against the corner of the cabin. Her hands shook, but her voice was firm. The man named Jonah widened his eyes, feeling fear for the first time. Sophia's finger was already on the trigger. But before anything could happen, the sound of sirens pierced the silence. Lights flashed through the window, freezing in the cold. The sound of sirens echoed through the forest, mingling with the sharp night wind. Sophia couldn't believe someone had heard her. For years, she had cried silently in the dark, and no one had noticed. But this time, someone had listened to her pleas. Her gaze returned to Jonah, who now lay on the ground, writhing in pain. His arm, bitten by Aiden, was bleeding. He was terrified, realizing for the first time that he was no longer in control. The black wolf growled, stepping forward, ready to attack again if needed. "Jonah," trembling with pain and fear, crawled backward like a cornered mouse. "Sophia, help me," he begged. His voice was quiet, devoid of its former strength. The authority he had held for years seemed to dissolve. The man who had once beaten and humiliated her was now begging for mercy. Finally, everything had changed. But Sophia didn't move. There was nothing left inside her to forgive. Suddenly, loud shouts echoed, like thunderclaps. It was the police. The door was broken down, and 3 officers burst into the cabin, their faces stern and weapons ready. They were prepared for any confrontation. The first thing they saw was the bloodied Sophia holding the shotgun. Jonah lay on the ground next to the black wolf. One of the officers shouted, "Drop the weapon!" Sophia flinched, momentarily confused. She realized she was gripping the shotgun tightly. She didn't know what she had intended to do. Maybe she wanted to end Jonah right there and then. She wanted to deliver justice with her own hands. Her fingers trembled on the trigger, but something warm and wet touched her hand. It was Aiden, looking at her with his golden eyes full of understanding. As if he wanted to say, "Sophia, you're safe now." She took a deep breath and dropped the gun. The officers immediately surrounded Jonah and roughly handcuffed him. He struggled, screaming like an animal in a cage. "She attacked me, this crazy girl. It was her." He spat, his words mixed with blood. One of the officers struck him on the back of the head, silencing him. "We know exactly who you are, Jonah. You were already under suspicion, but now it's over. Your eyes don't lie." Jonah was dragged out of the cabin, his face filled with despair as his resistance became futile. Sophia stood by the cabin door, watching everything unfold without a word. Her body ached, but her soul rejoiced. After nearly 10 years of horror, Jonah would finally pay for his crimes. A few weeks later, the courtroom was packed with reporters, townspeople, and curious strangers. They had all come to see Jonah face justice. Sophia sat in the front row, her hand gently resting on Aiden's head as he lay at her feet. Her heart clenched with anticipation as Jonah entered the room, dressed in an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. He was no longer the terrifying man from the cabin. His arrogance and strength were gone from his eyes, replaced only by the realization of defeat. During the trial, neighbors who had lived nearby testified about the screams they had heard for years, but never dared to intervene. Doctors presented the results of Sophia's medical examinations, which confirmed the presence of scars and injuries. The investigation revealed poorly healed fractures, evidence of physical and psychological abuse. When it was Sophia's turn to speak in court, silence fell. She stepped up to the witness stand and began to speak. Her voice echoed through the room. "For years, Jonah hurt me, humiliated me, and treated me as if I were nothing." She looked him straight in the eye. "But today I am free," she said with confidence. For the first time, Jonah looked away. The judge spoke. "Jonah Almeida, you are sentenced to 30 years in prison for physical abuse, torture, and attempted murder." All these events flashed through Sophia's mind as the case was closed and Jonah was led away. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. When she opened them, she saw Aiden, her loyal wolf, her protector, and her only friend when no one else could help. Sophia smiled, knowing that Jonah, sentenced to 30 years in prison, would no longer threaten her. But for Sophia, freedom wasn't as simple as she had thought. In the days following the trial, her mind was in a fog. Medical procedures, interviews, and the support of people who had previously ignored her became her new reality. Aiden was called the hero wolf, and everyone wanted to know the story of the girl who had survived hell. But Sophia didn't want to be in the spotlight. She only wanted peace. She was taken to a temporary shelter, where she received psychological help and began a new life. For the first time in years, Sophia slept without fear. But her scars remained. At night, she was haunted by nightmares. The sound of the whip, drunken laughter, and Jonah's cold gaze. Sometimes she woke up in a cold sweat, afraid it had all been a dream. On those difficult nights, Aiden was by her side, the black wolf lying at the edge of her bed, his breathing calm. Aiden was her anchor, But then something unexpected happened. 3 months after the trial, as Sophia was reading a book on the shelter's balcony, a black car abruptly stopped on the other side of the street. Sophia's heart raced. Aiden, who had been lying peacefully beside her, raised his ears and let out a low growl. The car door opened, and a man in a dark suit stepped out. He didn't look like a journalist. There was something about him that made Sophia shrink. The man looked directly at her and walked toward her with determined steps. Sophia immediately knew something was wrong. "Sophia Almeida?" he asked in a cold voice. She didn't answer. The tension was almost palpable. "My name is Delegate Vasconcelos, and I need to speak with you," he said. Sophia frowned, hearing Jonah's name, as if a knife had pierced her heart. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice trembling more than she expected. The delegate sighed, pulled a piece of paper from his pocket, and handed it to her. It was a photograph taken in prison. It showed Jonah, smiling with cruelty in his eyes. Sophia felt her breath catch. She knew he hadn't given up on her. In prison, Jonah had boasted that he would return one day to take what belonged to him. The world seemed to spin around her. But he was sentenced to 30 years in prison and would never be free, she protested inwardly. Aiden sensed her panic and growled softly. The delegate clenched his jaw. "We have reason to believe Jonah has dangerous connections inside the prison. We think he's trying to manipulate the system to reduce his sentence or, worse, find a way out before his time is up." Sophia felt her breathing become uneven. She wanted to believe it was over, but Jonah was still there, like a ghost haunting her. Aiden growled quietly, sensing the tension in the air. "Sophia, I'm here because I want you to be safe," the delegate said. She looked at him, then at the photograph of Jonah, who stared back at her with the same cruel gaze, a silent threat in his eyes. In that moment, she realized she wasn't free. But one thing was clear. If Jonah tried to return, she would be ready. Sophia began her life away from the cabin and the nightmares that haunted her. The media called Aiden the wolf who saved a life, and he became a legend in the city. But to Sophia, he would always be more than just a legend. He was proof that even in the darkest moments, there was a chance for salvation. And when no one else listened to her, he was there,